Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the new Westland City Hall. For some of you that may not have been here yet, we're pleased today to have everybody here as we honor the City of Westland's second mayor, Mr. Gene Mckinney. We have a lot of special people in the room here today, including members of Gene's family, some of his former staff members, a lot of city employees, and a lot of dignitaries. So with that, I'm going to introduce our City Council President, Jim GODBOUT, and ask him to step forward, and he is going to recognize the dignitaries. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. And as you look out into this crowd, there are a lot of dignitaries here. Gene is a testament to you. I'll start off by introducing our mayor, William R. Wild. My colleagues on the Westland City Council, Councilman Jim Hart and Councilman Mike Landau. Our city clerk, Richard LeBlanc. Our Chris Mattis, the regional director for Senator Gary Peters. State Representative Kevin Coleman. Wayne County Commissioner Glenn Anderson. Former Mayor Tom Taylor. Former Mayor Charles Pickering. Former Mayor Trav Griffin. Former Mayor and 18th District Court Judge Sandra Ferentz-Cicerelli. Judge Mark McConnell. Retired Judge Gail McKnight and her husband Richard. Deputy Mayor Mike Reddy. Representing our City Attorney's Office, Mike McNamara. The Village of Grosse Pointe Shores City Manager and Mayor McKinney's Executive Assistant, Mark Wallenweber. There are, as you can tell, there are a lot of members from the City of Westland administration here. And then we also have proclamations along the window on the outside from Mayor Wild at Westland City Council and the City Clerk, State Senator Gary Peters, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, State Representatives Jewel Jones and Kevin Coleman, and Wayne County Commissioners Al Hadas and Glenn Anderson. Thank you all for coming this morning for this great ceremony to honor Gene Mckinney.
Thank you, Council President. I'd also like to mention that former police chief William Reckland is in the audience here today. He was former police chief for Gene Mckinney. I understand that the chief had to change his schedule to be here today, so we certainly appreciate you being here, Chief. And we also have another very special guest that's with us, Miss Margaret Rose. And Margaret is 105 years old, and she's going strong. So thank you for being here today, Mrs. Rose. I'm going to ad lib a little bit here too, and thank you to all the other mayors that are here today. As you can see, that this is the job that gives you a lot of gray hair, except for Judge Cicerelli. She dodged that bullet somehow. So, but the rest of the mayors being here today, all of you played an important role into creating the All-American City, and we appreciate the work that you did for our city and the fact that you came here today as we honor Mayor Gene Mckinney. So thank you for being here. It's hard to believe it's been 50 years since Mayor McKinney began his first term as the mayor of the city of Westland. Gene was born in Nankin Township on June 21st, 1935. He served as a member of the Nankin Township Charter Commission, which aimed to transition the community from a township to a city. He worked alongside 8 other individuals to write the city charter, and together their work helped lay the framework for the policies that we still use today to manage the city of Westland. Gene was elected as Westland's second mayor and served the city of Westland from 1969 to 1975. At the time that Gene was elected, he was the youngest mayor in the state of Michigan. Mayor Mckinney worked with members of the community and other government officials to integrate many enhancements into the Westland community, including laying the groundwork for Westland's post office, the establishment of the Historical Commission, the Housing Commission, and the Westland Library Board to allow planning for our own library. Gene worked to rename the Wayne School District to include Westland, where it's now known as the Wayne Westland School District. He succeeded in development of the Westland Golf Course, bringing the Humane Society to Westland, launching a police cadet program for young residents interested in public safety, and he oversaw the building of a new police station and 2 fire stations. Throughout his distinguished career, Mayor Mckinney was committed to promoting diversity, inclusivity, and ensuring the satisfaction and well-being of all Westland residents. Mayor Mckinney has been proud to call this great city his home, and he still remains active in the community. He still lives here. He served on the city's 50th anniversary committee, and he volunteered his time and efforts to Norway's 75th anniversary. Mayor Mckinney, when the Westland City Council adopted the resolution honoring you here today, it was a 7-0 vote. It was unanimous, and my secretary, Shannon, who I have to thank, Shannon and Kathy in my office, they worked hard to put this program together, so they did a great job right up until the last minute. But Shannon said that when she told you it went through 7-0, you said that may be your first unanimous vote you ever got. So I think that speaks to how hard it is sometimes to do these jobs. With that, we've invited a few people here to say a few words this morning. I'd like to introduce Mr. Mark Wollenweber. Mark is the current city manager for the village of Grosse Pointe Shores, and he's served as Mayor McKinney's executive assistant. Mark?
Thanks, Mayor. I thank you for the invitation to be part of this program to honor Gene McKinney, who's been both a mentor to me and a friend over many years. And of course, we connected when he lived in Grosse Pointe, and I was in Grosse Pointe Woods or in St. Clair Shores before that. But, you know, being hired by Gene to be his assistant was both a great learning experience for me. I was just a kid. I wish I could say that now, but I had a new master's degree from University of Detroit, now Mercy, I don't like that name, and my only professional experience was a couple of years at the Michigan Municipal League. Gene had already assembled a great team of local professionals. Hank Lundquist, right?
That's right.
A council member when I worked here, and later Public Works Director, but you know, many of his people, I see a couple of them here today. Manny Lentini in assessing, Bill Reckland, I got to say hello later. Later became the public safety director in Berkeley, as well as the city manager. And I learned from him, don't work on Fridays. So in my last couple of jobs, I made sure that was the case. His staff, you know, my all-time favorite, Ralph Savini, you named the main fire station after him, a great guy to work with, and his staff. Bill Engel was really one of my favorite people to work with. And I'll tell you some stories later about that. I think I can still tell them here. I don't think the police are going to be concerned about that. But Ken West was a city engineer. I later worked with Ken in Plymouth. He was our city engineer when I was the assistant manager after leaving here in Plymouth. Art Watala was in water. Billy Williams was like the foreman. It was nice to see Mac Mayfield. We used to wait till Billy Williams went on vacation, and then everything Gene wanted to get done in Public Works, I'd call Mac and we'd take care of it before Billy got back from vacation. But as mayor, he paired us young people, or kids as he used to call us, with the seasoned professionals that he had on the staff to begin with. And we learned a lot of lessons. And for me, it was really an important thing to learn to be able to translate policy into real public performance in delivering services to the people of the community. And sometimes that left us hang out to dry on a few issues, but that Gene always thought that was a good learning experience. You know, I can't forget to say hello to Chuck Pickering too, who used to call me every time he either lost an election. He said, "I think I'm going to go be a city manager. Can you help me do it?" And then he'd run for office again. And of course, he was a mayor here, but he was one of the crew of young people that Gene brought in and paired us with a lot of the seasoned professionals that the city had. And it was really fun to work with that. After leaving Westland, I became the assistant manager in Plymouth. Then I was the manager in Huntington Woods for 12 years, where my kids grew up. And then I ran out of things to do. When you pave every street in the community, you know, I worried about, what am I going to do in my afternoons now? But I then went to St. Clair Shores, where there was lots of challenges. We started out with in 1990 with a $5,000 fund balance, and I left and it was $5 million. And of course I was able to, thank goodness, from other people that I learned with, bring all my retirement time. So I have a wonderful pension from courtesy of St. Clair Shores, including health care, which is really nice. But you know, many of the people that Gene brought on board went on to careers in local government. Bill Reckland, I mentioned, Ernie Fisher, who had my job before I did, has passed away, but he was a city manager in 2 communities. Later, the mayor's assistant in Warren, of course, one of the, I think it's the second largest, maybe it's the 3rd largest city. His daughter later, who I did not know, actually worked for me in Huntington Woods and retired as an administrator from the city of Farmington Hills. One of our planner at the time went back to Louisiana and became the governor's assistant for planning. I think our purchasing director went to Texas as a city manager, ended up being the city manager in Arlington, Texas, where the Texas baseball team, and very close to where the football team is too. But his pairing us as new enthusiastic staff people with the older professionals helped us turn book knowledge and policy into really practical experience. You know, he served as one of my key mentors, and one of the things that he impressed upon all of our staff was, 1, to do the right thing, and then 2, to think about how to do it rightly or correctly as well. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Well, before I do that, I should say, you know, he is Michigan grad, worked in the newspaper, as did his wife, Sue. I think Sue did the city logo many years ago, the first city logo. I don't have a tile with it, but I have tiles from most of the communities I worked in: Huntington Woods, St. Clair Shores, Grosse Pointe Woods, Grosse Pointe Shores from Pewabic Tile. But his brother Ted was a doctor, active at Botsford Hospital. His brother Phil was a city attorney in Wayne for many years, worked with a good friend of ours, John Zeck. But I think they learned that from the most important person in their family, which is their mom. Kitty Mckinney, everybody in the community loved her. I think if she ran for office, she'd get more votes than Gene. I hope I'm not telling somebody's story, because everybody loved her, and she was just a grand person, and Gene lives in her house now for that. But it was my pleasure to work her here, and he instilled in us both ethics and integrity. And as I said, I think that came from his family values, from things that his mom taught him. And I'll give you a couple of examples. In one case, we got a call from the IRS that they were attaching a council person's check. And rather than use that politically, he said, tell them to take care of it. We're not going to say anything about it, etc. And this particular person wasn't particularly one of our 4 voters or whatever on city council at the time. A perfect example of doing the right thing in the right way and letting it. Now, I don't know how we could have got away with that today with the way media is and things like that, but it was really a perfect example of that. During another time here, and he put the staff out there. We took care of a lot of things. I was responsible for sitting through the city council meetings, and at one of the council meetings, you know, you kind of we're sitting off to the side. We'd pass joke books back and forth. I'm not supposed to say this, but we did. And you know, those that are elected officials know that people in the audience are there to kind of cause a problem sometimes with council members. And so I kind of wasn't paying attention, and I found myself clapping with the audience when they were yelling at Bob Wagner or something. I said, I had to go into the washroom and throw some water on my face to like, geez, I'm not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to be nonpartisan, et cetera. So, no, those are the kinds of things that one of those meetings, this lady stood up and said her name was Nancy Wallenweber. And the staff were all looking at me. That's my wife's name, the love of my life. And this was not my wife. And she wasn't even related to me. And I thought everybody, when you have a strange name like that, everybody is related to you that used to be in the Detroit phone book. And she was complaining about something. It's like, I had to send a note back down to the staff. This is not my wife. Because several had met them, and I'd met her and knew that was the case. But Gene was a journalist, as was Sue, his wife. And his experience in that, I think, also helped frame the kinds of things that he had us do and we learned. And we learned the Ford way, too, because Gene worked for Ford. He wrote the Ford Times little magazine, which I always enjoyed seeing, which I don't think they have anymore. And one of the things we had to do, if we left the suite of offices that were in the mayor's office, we had to put on a coat, our suit coat, because you didn't usually wear a sport coat. Made sure our tie was straight and walked to another part of the building. I don't even wear ties anymore. Gene and I were talking about this before. He said it took him 20 minutes to figure out how to tie his tie. I haven't forgotten that far yet, but I don't usually wear ties either. And our council in Grosse Pointe Shores doesn't require that. In fact, a couple of them, only the mayor does, and he wears the same red, white, and blue tie all the time. So some of them don't. And so, of course, on the east side, many of our folks show up without socks, even in the winter, et cetera. But a lot of the projects that we worked together on later bore fruit for the city. I think Taylor Towers, I was the staff person assigned to the Housing Commission. And this could be urban legend, I'm not even sure. But I think I got the grant that resulted in the construction of that, where I think Mayor Taylor actually later worked. There were a couple of I think we bought the land for the Westland Library is an issue. Libraries have always been important for me. And really, thanks to Mayor Wild, I worked and had some help from the library network, which I serve as the board chair and have for the last 8 or 10 years, help restructure here the library to make sure it worked. And, you know, it was always, in my time in St. Clair Shores when we were tight of finances, you know, some people in a community like that, even if it's a wonderful community on the water, think the only thing cities should provide is police, fire, and garbage pickup. So it used to be tough for me sometimes to twist people's arms. And I had a councilman there say to me, well, why did you put full funding back in for the library in your first budget? And I said, well, I think it's important, and communities got to be more than police, fire, and garbage pickup, even though those are important issues. He said, well, no, I can't vote against it. I said, why do you think I put it in the budget? So, my time working with Gene and the key staff people helped prepare me for other positions, both in government and other leadership roles. I've been fortunate to be the state president for city managers. I was on the international ICMA board for city managers around the world. And that comes back to the learning that I got from people here and the opportunity that Gene provided for me to be his assistant here. And I'm sure, I got to tell you a real funny story. One of the times, and again, Gene put us out there, and we would deal with issues. People come in to the office and would complain about not even city things. One lady was going to dump all of her furnishings on the front lawn of City Hall because social services wouldn't find her another home. And it was like, ma'am, this is not a city issue. You got to talk to whoever was our county, well, Tom was the county commissioner at that time, and said, you got to go to social service, it's a state issue or something like that. So we dealt with a lot of those, but one of my favorites, and Gene knows this story, is I got a call from the Inkster Police Department. And they said, did you lose a car? A city car? Well, I don't know. What is it? What's the license plate on it? And so he gave me, I had to grab the list of our vehicles. It's like, that's a city engineer's car. So I'm thinking about this. I said, no, I don't think we lose it. But I'll find out and call you back. So I called over to DPW, Bill Engel, who was a great friend, starts laughing. And he said, I know why you're calling. And I said, you do? What were you doing at lunchtime? Well, you think I'm stupid? Bill said this exactly like this. He said, you think I'm stupid enough to take my car to the strip joint on Michigan Avenue? No, I made the city engineer drive. I was like, I said, Bill, next time you got to do this, and I think Bill's no longer with us, so I could tell this story, said, park in the Inkster Police Department, walk across the alley if you have to do that. It's a lot safer, and no one's going to call me or find our car in the wrong parking lot. One of the last story I'm going to tell, and then we'll turn it over to the real part of the program. After several lawsuits that took several years to resolve, we got our first, and this provided two good lessons for me. We finally got our first paving program done, or started. So I went to the pre-construction, and they're paving away and stuff. And it happened to be John Carlo when they were first getting started, big company that did a lot of state work later. And I think both the Carlo brothers have passed away. But John Carlo himself was involved in this. And he calls me and said, on blank street, and I forgot what the name of the street was, we have a problem. What's the problem? The test didn't come back good or what? I'm not exactly sure. He said, no. All the sod we put down, the paving's fine. The sod we put down, it's all disappeared. Well, where did it go? And he said, well, residents in that neighborhood took the sod from below the sidewalk and moved it into their front lawn on the other side of the sidewalk. I said, this is an improvement for the community. We'll buy more sod. Don't worry about it. And that's a kind of, again, a lesson that I learned from Gene to say, you do things the right way. And this was an advantage to the people in that neighborhood. So we did the right thing, and we did it in the right way. I said, look, we'll pay for more sod. I think that's probably the safest story that I could tell you. But I would like to kind of just finish up to say the kind of Gene and a few other folks that I work for, Bob Fryer at the Municipal League, and in many of the cities that I've worked, helped shape my character and allowed me to learn to do things both the right way and correctly. And I really thank Gene for the opportunity to work with him, to be here in the city of Westland. We were close to 90,000 population back then. And I know he's followed by a series of other quality mayors, but his leadership, his ability to allow a lot of us young people to work in the community, to learn from the seasoned veterans that he had, to deal with the city council and stuff, helped shape my career, and I'm eternally grateful for that. And I thank the Westland City Council, Mayor Wild, who I had the good fortune of meeting when he was going to go through SEMCOG to the Kennedy Summer School program at Harvard. So I called him up, we got through, we had lunch over at the Yacht Club, and he was kind enough to tell me that everything I told him, how great the program was, worked when he came back and we had lunch at the DAC. So thank you for allowing me to participate in the program. Thank you for the work all the mayors have done, all the city councils here. It's nice to see Glenn Anderson. Glenn was, I think in the legislature, we were talking about Bill Faust, who helped start the library, was a big supporter of those things. This is a community that has presented the state of Michigan with many great leaders. And it's really been fortunate for me to work with Gene and to thank him and his family for all the growth that they provided in terms of me. Thank you.
All right, one of you guys walked off with my next sheet of, get an extra one there with you, Mark? There we go.
Sorry.
No problem. Next up, we're going to ask former Mayor Tom Taylor. Mr. Taylor served as the City of Westland's, he was our third mayor. He served from the years 1975 to 1982, directly following Mr. McKinney's tenure. So, Mayor Taylor, would you step forward, say a few words?
Just a couple of corrections for things that have happened in the city that people have misinterpreted and nobody ever straightened them out. But for the first thing is that that great big building that's on Marquette, 10-story high-rise, was called Central City Park Towers. I know that because I named it while I was mayor. And one of the first things that happened after I left was my staff turned around and called it Taylor Towers. Which was, of course, made proud of it, but embarrassed me. When I had left the city, I had gotten out of politics. I had spent 3 terms as a county commissioner, 2-year terms, and came in and was mayor as well. But when I left, I swore to myself I was not going to do that again. That was all that. Things seemed to have happened to me serendipitously. I had made up my mind that I was not going to run again for as mayor. The paving program, for one thing, was a disaster, still is, I guess, to some point. And it was a cemetery for politicians that got into it and couldn't find a way out. But in any event, I left. And or had made up my mind to leave, and Nationwide Life walked into the door and said, we've got a big program to sell deferred compensation programs to city employees, a program that school teachers have had forever. The federal government finally made it available for local government employees, and they said, we'd like you to take over the Wayne County account. And like I said, I'd been on the Board of Commissioners for 3 years, and it was the equivalent of somebody saying, I've got $10,000 here, would you like it? So that was a very lucrative thing, and I did it for a number of years. Then I came into, and every once in a while I'd check my accounts and make sure I had 5 salesmen in the road. And I'd check with them and see that everything was going all right. And as I was walking through the new police station, and by the way, I was a cop for 13 years before I got into politics, and many times I've asked myself why. I loved it, though. It was a great job. Westland was 6 when we started right from scratch. So it was, like I say, a terrific job. But in any event, one of my people who had signed up in the program was also a personal friend, and she's on the board at Central City Park Towers. And I said, how's everything going there? They had hired a management company that had their own buildings as well. And she said, we're not satisfied with the management anymore. We'd like you to come and run it. And so I did. I went there and ran it. And one of the first days I had on the first day, a salesman came in, and they were in and out of my office all the time. And he said, do you want to sell the building? And I said, what? I was taken aback. I said, what do you mean, do I want to sell the building? I'm just the manager. He said, well, it's got your name on it now. So I had to make that clarification over and over and over again for 6 years. But it was a great thing to do. It's a terrific building, and it's a real asset to the community. A couple of things about Kitty McKinney. Our relationship, Jean and I and Jean's mother, Gene's mother and my mother were great friends. They were book friends. They were always, both of them reading all the time, library stuff and everything. And my mother came to me one time and she said, Kitty Mckinney has found out about a book and she has tried everything to find it. Can you get her a copy? And I had a little side business called Taylor Search Service, and that was exactly what I did. And I found one within a couple of days, got it and then took it and handed it to her. And from there on, she and I we were tight. People ask about politicians, about getting back into it. And I said, no, once you get out of that, it would be kind of like putting yourself back on the suicide list. So I don't think I want to do that anymore. I admire the people that do it. I admire people in public service. Like I said, I was on 3 different police departments as a patrolman, a chief, and a sergeant. All of them good jobs. All of them were the kind of thing that when you went home at night or in the after your shift, you were proud of what you'd done. And I was proud to be involved with this outfit. What happened is that for some reason I got stale on being a policeman, and I decided, well, I think I'll run for county commissioner. And there was nobody there to slap me. So I did, and I ran, and I got elected. And I got elected the second time, and I got elected the third time. And I said, and there was a lot of things. It's altogether different than anything you see on any other kind of television. And you have to learn the system, all that. And I said, boy, I'd like to go back to Westland. Well, that didn't work. So I said, well, if I can't come back, maybe I can run for it. And I said, what I'll do is we'll put a 4-year ballot down, or a 4-year term for mayor and not county commissioners, for mayors. And every mayor after that owes me a big one for that 4 years, I'll tell you. Because otherwise you're running all the time. And it's just a crazy thing. And that's just about it. Being a mayor, like I say, had a lot of things about it that you went home feeling like you'd done something positive. When you can look at a building, and all mayors don't get that opportunity, and say, I was involved in that, myself and a lot of other people, but still I was involved in it, is a feeling that's, they can't take it away from you, and there's nothing greater than being of service in your hometown. Thank you very much. Oh, one little point of clarification. Somehow or other, about the time that I was getting ready to jump from policeman to county commissioner and back, the story got out that Gene and I were enemies. And nothing could be farther from the truth. And I think this deal with the book might have been set up between Kitty and May, my mother. And it worked because it got Gene and I back together. Whenever I'm going down Cherry Hill and I see him sitting out there in his yard, I pull in and we chat. And out of that came a little group that we started once a month. And it's for just local people that want to come and talk and laugh and and if you're really good at telling lies, it's a good place. Yeah. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Okay, well, we're all here for one reason, and that is Mr. Gene Mckinney, the city's second mayor. Mr. Mckinney, would ask you to step forward and say a few words now as well.
Thank you all. I'm kind of overwhelmed by all this. but everyone kind of stole my speech. So here's my little speech I have here. You know, I did a lot of speech writing in my career after I was in politics, and it's a lot easier to write a speech for someone else than yourself. So, look, I just got these notes, and the first thing I was listening, you can all see, when I left Ford, the director called me in and we just were talking. He said, now, I'm going to tell you one thing. Always hire people smarter than you. And my opponents would say, well, that's easy to do for him to do, for crying out loud. So, as you can see, I hired guys like Mark, and because he certainly, he taught me an awful lot about how to run a city. I remember calling Michigan Municipal League and saying, I'm looking for an assistant, and I'm trying to bring some professionalism into the staff, and they said, we got a guy who is just chomping at the bit to get on the front lines and be the city, and his name is Mark Molweber. So he came over, and here walked in this kid. You know, I thought, God, is this the guy who's going to tell me how to run the city? And yeah, it worked. And he told some stories. He cleaned up a lot of those stories, believe me. I want to thank Mayor Wild for proposing this. When his office called me and they said, what do you want? And I said, I want the least amount of pomp and circumstance I can have. Because I'm kind of a dull guy, you know, and I don't give good speeches, and crowds kind of overwhelm me, but I see all these wonderful people I've not seen in so long. But, so, I really am proud of what he did, and I want to thank the Council of President GODBOUT to get the council to a unanimous vote. And when I heard that, I said, now wait a minute, I've never gotten unanimous votes. So I was going to call council city clerk Richard LeBlanc and say, could you confirm that vote for me? Was it actually unanimous? Because I lived with 4-3 votes almost all the time, as Mark will attest. And every once in a while, Council President Henry Lundquist would see the light and vote for me, so it'd be 5-2. So thanks a lot, Hank, for doing that. Tom mentioned about getting together, and I look forward to that third Tuesday of the month. We meet at Mr. Mike's for breakfast, and it says it was sort of, we talk about the way we were, but what I do is I put parenthetically the way we wish and think we were, because our stories get better and better, you know, as we go along. And you know, Tom is the guy that drove me out of office, and we had a hard campaign, and now we can talk about it a lot, and hearing some of the things said about me, I'm going to be 84 years old, and hell, I'm thinking if I'm all that good, I might run again. But luckily, in my day, it was different. We didn't have guys like Mayor Wild to run against, because the city of Westland is really lucky to have someone like that, because I had a hard time. My job was, I thought, to make the switch from township government to city government, and not just city government, but a very difficult kind of city government, strong mayor council. And the council, they were used to, having a supervisor and sit at the board, and they just have one vote, just like everyone else. So quickly I became known as the bully by a lot of people, because, I have to say, I was chairman of the Charter Commission, and I felt that I understood the charter, and in my own maybe arrogant way, I thought I knew better than some of the council. So we got into a lot of tiffs about things, like who does he think he is and all that stuff. And I remember, I'm kind of wandering around, I haven't even started on my speech yet. But I remember I brought in pretty much all new people, experienced people. All of them were not experienced in city government, but some from industry. And we had a guy named Hal Worrell, who was our personnel director. And we were always, having tough negotiations with 1602 and the various unions. And so we got down, I never went to them until I said, don't call me until you got a settlement or something that I can say, okay, that sounds good. And so we were going to about, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I finally said, hell, I'm going home. Hal, you call me when you got something. So I went home. I didn't hear from Hal, so I came to work early the next morning, and there's 1602 people circling City Hall with signs, said, down with King Gene. And so I went into Hal. I said, what in the heck happened? And he said, well, I was supposed to be called. So I thought you needed to sleep. I didn't want to bother you. So he told them at the last, he said, if you don't accept this offer, you can hit the bricks. So that's what they did. So his nickname was forever Bricks, right? And he was just a wonderful person. Everyone called him, the 1602 people called him Bricks. I would say to my secretary, would you have Bricks come over? And, that was just his name, So, but we needed to bring into the city some professional people, because I kept in mind, I got to hire people smarter than me. And as you heard Mark, you can see that was certainly an example of that. Mark, he didn't say this, but he's now considered one of the top 5 city managers in the state. He is absolutely outstanding. He's had an outstanding career, and I learned a lot from him. But the honor of today, I think, is not the first name Gene Mckinney. It's the McKinneys, because my folks, Max and Kitty, came from Indiana in 1931, and we ended up on Cherry Hill buying a house that my mother had never seen. You couldn't find houses there, and we were renting a house, and the tenant said, you got to get out because I got to rent it to someone else, my mother. And so my dad went driving around the neighborhood, and there on Cherry Hill was a little shack, and he said, that's for us. And so that's where we moved. In 1940, I was 5 years old, and so I remember this town when it was a little town. In fact, we just thought we were in Wayne. We didn't even think about Natkin Township. And, Cherry Hill was gravel. Wayne Road was 2 lanes. There were no supermarkets around. My older brother and I, Ted, we worked at Oscar's, a little grocery store in the corner of Cherry Hill and Wayne Road, and right across from Katy School. We lived in the Katy School community, and we were like 10 and 11. There we were working in a store, and in those good old days, people didn't have a lot of money, and so even though, I don't know, bread was probably 15 cents, but underneath the counter there we had a book with people's names, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, bread and milk, $1.75. And so payday, they would come in and pay their bill. And there was nothing said about it, that's just the way it was. And so there we were at that age doing that kind of stuff. And my brother Ted, who passed away a couple years ago, we were trying to figure out how much we made, and we figured we probably made maybe 10 or 15 cents an hour, but we could eat as much ice cream as we wanted. And we've made the most fantastic sundaes and ice cream cones that you ever saw. And so I'm saying that because this was just a small town, and where my mother and dad, they got very active in the community, not in politics. I was really the first one to get involved in politics, but they were in good things like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, PTA, Red Cross. And my dad was actually even a volunteer fire warden during World War II. Can you imagine as if anyone was going to bomb this area? But, he walked around, he had a helmet on and a fire extinguisher and a flashlight, and he had to make sure everyone had their shades pulled down because there might be a bomber overhead. So they were very much involved in community and so on. They would be just absolutely ecstatic to see something like this today, and to see actually their name, the McKinney name, after living in that little place. And I shouldn't say this, but that house we moved in had no indoor plumbing, and the pump was the old hand pump. And my dad probably violated every building code in the world, and added on to that house. And with the lumber that he bought from his job at his work. And you could just imagine, and he had practically no power tools. And he passed away when we were all kids. He was only 44. But he was the kind that I can just hear him now boasting to our neighbors that boy, his son was mayor of this town, and he's got his name on it, and the Mckinney name on it. My mother would be much more discreet than that. You know, she wouldn't brag, but I can just hear my dad really boasting. So I really appreciate that it's the Mckinney name on there, not just Gene Mckinney. So I tried to set up, to change from township to city, and I think we were successful in doing that. It came very difficult to do, very hard to do. But I wanted to keep coming back to a town. I didn't want us to be just another typical community you drive through, like the Dearborn Heights. You don't even know, one from the other. I wanted a nice town. And so I started some things. Some were a dismal failure, like Westland Symphony Orchestra. And we had, as best Tom and I know we had one concert. I hired a guy named Chuck Hurd, who was a very highly regarded music school teacher in the Wayne district. And we had one concert. I actually have a 33 and third record of our concert. And I probably want to give that to the Historical Commission. I don't know if they have it or not. But neither Tom nor I can remember what happened to the Westland Symphony Orchestra. So every once in a while I kind of chide Mayor Wild about paving roads and getting the Westland Symphony Orchestra. So I think he's going to silently tell me, would he please shut up about that stuff? So we did that, but we wanted our own library, and so as he mentioned, we created a lot of these things with the help of the city council. Everything was, not really tough to get through. I mean, who's going to vote against the library board? Well, maybe Glenn Shaw did. I know that I think about it. But so because I just, wanted a town. We built the Nankin Boulevard because we thought Wayne Road and the Nankin Boulevard and Cowan and Warren, that was going to be our downtown. And Mayor Wild has, I think, elaborated on it. Nankin Boulevard never panned out the way I thought that it would. But we still have, it's called I prefer to call it Wine and Dine, but it's better, more discreet, so it's called the Dine and Shop, isn't it? And, yeah, so it's a very nice district. Now, I think I had a hard time. I think the mayor has a very hard time today because things are changing in city government. And you can start with large shopping centers. Westland has already lost Macy's, right? Penny's is on the border, and so is Sears. What on earth what are we going to do with that shopping center? And because the internet, of course, is changing the shopping attitudes of people. And so that is a very challenging thing that the mayor today has. Yet there's no resting saying, okay, we got everything we need. No, you don't, because you got Canton, you got Plymouth Town. Canton just blew right by us. And I blame a lot of people, including myself, to allow that. We should have had what Canton now has, as far as I'm concerned. And so they're going to keep going. Plymouth Township's going to keep going. Livonia is always there. So we can't be just rest on our laurels, as the mayor well knows. That's why we got to really buckle down, and the mayor and the council have got to say, what are we going to do when the shopping center is? Who knows? That thing might close someday. You say, no, that could never happen, but it could. So I'm not telling the mayor anything he doesn't know, but I just want to say that, I had troubles getting from township to city with a lot of people, and the mayor now, I think, has his work cut off on him and what he's going to do, and I'm afraid we're going to lose him one of these days. We better be, we better be sure who we get. Back in the day, when we were partisan, Democrat and Republican, man, we had some real, elections were a lot different. I don't know, I think, did you run unopposed this last time?
First two times.
God, we had everything was a battle. And everyone wanted to throw each other out. And it was just, when we had a, what do we call a beat the candidates night, there would be 50, 60 people, 100 people there sometimes, just raising hell with the council and the mayor, all the candidates. Now, my gosh, and we'd go to the Democratic Club and there'd be 50 classic stereotypical Democrats, with the beer in one hand and yelling at everyone else. And now you go to the Democratic Club, there might be 10 people there. And Hank Johnson is here someplace, and he's a sort of has run that thing for quite a while, and he knows, it's hard to get people interested anymore. And that's another battle you got. If I never knew, I like to know, people live in condos and apartments, which was always a battle back then, whether they vote, how many times they vote, if they're interested, or if they know whether they're living in Westland or Canton or Dearborn Heights. You drive around the old neighborhood, which I love to do, and I see these houses, and you remember things. I can't remember what I did yesterday, but sometimes I can remember what I did 75 years ago, and when I was in grade school or something, and I remember the teachers, and I drive by the houses, I think, well, I think that's where Lovell used to live, and I think that's where Snyder's used to live, and they're real nice old houses built in the 30s, and you don't have those kind of neighborhoods anymore, but you have different neighborhoods, but somehow you got to get them to feel that this is their hometown. And when you get that feeling, which is what I tried to do, and I think subsequent mayors might have tried the same thing, then you know that you're in this is your town, you take your elections seriously, and you elect good people, and so that's the challenge that the mayor has, and he knows he has that. I'm a derelict in not introducing my family, for heaven's sakes, so I have to right now introduce first my daughter, Kia. Where are you, Kia? Right there. And her is Steve, her husband, Steve. And there are 4 boys, if you can imagine raising 4 boys, Stephen and Max and Nick and Andrew. And next, I have to and they're from Cincinnati. They all took off work, came here from Cincinnati. And in fact, they do 2 cars because the boys have to go back sometime this afternoon, and because they all work and their school's over, I think, for most of them. And so this was a real thing for them to come. I really appreciate that. And my sister, who's 88, she came here from Milwaukee. So Nancy, where are you? There. Maybe she's 87 and going to be 88. I forget. And then my brother, Phil, and his wife, Mary. Now, I want to say something about Phil, and he's going to be very upset that I am, because there are 2 people in my campaigns that everyone liked better than they like me. One was my mother, and the other one was Phil. And I don't know how, I sort of sneaked in there somehow or another, but without Phil, I never would have won the elections. He was my campaign manager in every one of them. My mother ran the campaign headquarters, and it was just, we had precinct captains in every precinct, and they all would much rather talk with Phil than me, and I don't know why that is. Maybe I'm not approachable or something, but Phil definitely is, and so I really appreciate it. The one election, well, of course, we lost to Tom, but he was too young for my first election, and I don't know if Louis Pateau is here today. He was going to be, darn it. He was my friend from Katy School for years, and then he was a city employee for years, and he beat me for a sophomore class president at Wayne High School. And he'd never let me forget that. So I wanted Louis to be here, darn it. So anyway, that's my family. And that's I guess I've got some other remarks, but I think that everyone has said so many things and so many nice things. As I said earlier, I just might run again if especially if there's an open seat, you know. And so, but I remember in the third grade, my teacher, Miss Laird, and she was probably fresh out of college. One of my nicest teachers and favorite teachers. And I tended to be kind of talkative to my so-called neighbors, you know, the students in front of you and behind you and on either side. Teachers said your neighbors. So I would frequently talk nonsense out of while she was trying to teach when we were supposed to be reading or something. And one day she took me out in the hall and put her arm on my shoulder and she said, "Gene, you are going to be a real success someday if you learn to stop talking." So that's what I'm doing right now. Thank you very much. Oh, good. Thanks very much. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor McKinney, and to his family members that drove so far to be here today. So now we come to the part where the City of Westland and its residents want to show our sincere appreciation and respect for the work that you did for our city, Mayor McKinney. And we're honored today to dedicate the Grand Ballroom here at Westland City Hall in your name. And the Grand Ballroom has become the place in the City of Westland where we hold most of our annual events. We kick off every year with a Martin Luther King Day ceremony in that room, and it's followed up by the State of the City and a lot of events all throughout the year. Every weekend, this building is being utilized by the public for weddings, for receptions, for wine tastings, birthday parties, Little League associations. And so moving forward, all those new memories in City Hall will always be associated with the McKinney family name. So thank you. So we already have a sign that's up on the wall that says Mayor Gene McKinney, the Grand Ballroom. But we're going to ask Mayor McKinney now and his family to join us just below that sign as we have a lasting impression that's going to stay on the walls here at City Hall moving forward. So if we could ask you to join us about halfway down the hallway. We're going to pull off the cover and officially dedicate the Grand Ballroom. Well, we're going to count down from 3, and Mr. McKinney, maybe your grandson here can help you, or actually just, all you got to do is give it a pull. You guys ready to count them down? Yes. All right, 3, 2, 1. Congratulations. Congratulations, Mayor.